The heavy thud of sledgehammers echoed. Muscular, powerful men began the demolition of the old shrine. Others called out to each other, straining to pull down the remaining pieces, clearing the valuable stone slabs surrounding the temple. Everyone was drenched in sweat. The sun beat down fiercely, baking the earth. Even the sparse shade of the young trees offered no relief from the scorching heat that seemed to consume everything. Elder Dean, the village head, urged everyone to work faster. Lately, this populous village had been plagued by misfortune. People fell ill constantly, unable to work. Crops failed, and harvests were meager. This decline left the villagers restless and deeply worried. Then, someone suggested seeking advice from a spiritual master to find a solution. Elder Khanh quickly heeded the counsel of the village elders, setting out to find a master to perform a sacrificial ceremony. The village spent an entire day in a flurry of preparations, arranging everything before inviting the master to conduct the ritual. After performing the rites and casting divinations, the impostor merely shook his head, addressing the villagers who watched him with hopeful, anxious eyes. "This shrine? There's something wrong with it. What you must do immediately is gather together and tear it down. Restore peace to the village as quickly as possible. Then, wait a few months and build a new shrine for worship. If you leave this old shrine standing, I fear the village's fate will only worsen day by day. You can all see the signs before your very eyes." Everyone was utterly confused upon hearing this, unsure of what to do. The shrine was ancient, yet for an entire year, the villagers had suffered from continuous illness. The impostor's words sounded logical, but there were still many uncertainties. His claims couldn't be confirmed with 100% accuracy. It was merely a suggestion for everyone to discuss, reflect on what had happened, and find a solution. That day, people gathered outside the shrine, their discussions buzzing from one corner to another. Opinions supporting the impostor held the majority. However, there were also voices against demolishing the shrine that had been a part of the villagers' lives for so many years. These fiery arguments quickly escalated into heated disputes. The situation grew tenser than ever. Of course, everyone had valid reasons. Those who wanted to demolish it simply wished for things to improve. Those who wanted to preserve it partly sought to protect a place that had been intertwined with countless lives, a place people returned to. It was ancient, not new. Moreover, for so many years, the village had no problems, so why suddenly believe the story that the shrine had lost its spiritual power and was no longer usable? That seemed unwise. Finally, everyone voted to decide which side to choose. The majority ruled. With no other option, those who disagreed were forced to accept the will of the majority. The resolution to demolish the shrine was passed with the overwhelming show of hands from everyone present. Many who resisted felt helpless, as it was a collective decision, leaving no room for further argument. No one spoke further, they simply dispersed. Those who remained could only shake their heads. Demolishing the shrine didn't mean not building a new one. It meant constructing a better one in a more auspicious location. People could enter more spaciously and comfortably, not crowded together as in the current shrine. The children played innocently together, seemingly unaffected. Then, Elder Khanh, in accordance with the majority's opinion, began to delegate tasks. The strong and able-bodied focused on tearing down the shrine. Others worked on stripping away the molds and frames. Demolishing this place would take at least 2 days. After that, they would have to dispose of the altars, incense burners, and statues. There was no need to keep them around, it would only be a hassle. After a period of shared effort, everyone's hands were calloused. They had only managed to demolish half of the shrine wall. The trees would probably need to be sawed down by afternoon. A few people discussed other matters. "This place is really sturdy, I'll give it that. We've exhausted all our strength just to break through. Now we're so tired we can't even describe it, but we know if we don't break it down, our village will keep suffering and dying." Everyone looked at the half-demolished wall, then shook their heads. Their clothes were filthy. They rested for a while, then continued working. Elder Khanh quickly brought out lunch for everyone to regain their spirits after a challenging morning of hard labor. Elder Khanh looked around at the men, who had begun pouring liquor for themselves, looking robust and strong. Everyone seemed quite refreshed, despite the scorching heat. "Will everything be finished by tonight, gentlemen?" Elder Khanh asked the group. The men pondered for a moment, then the foreman stood up and replied, "It should be done, Elder." After we eat, I'll have everyone dispose of all these old incense burners and sacred items into the river. If we keep going like this, we probably won't even need a midday break if we want to finish tonight. But for the cleanup, we'll need more people. Elder Keen nodded, agreeing with the foreman's suggestion. The two chatted for a while, then Elder Keen called out for more people to help clear the piles of bricks and debris. On this side, after eating and resting a bit to digest, they resumed work tirelessly. Sledgehammer blows landed with increasing force. The banyan tree was nearly sawn through, needing just one more strike to fall. Everyone focused on their respective tasks to ensure everything was handled smoothly. By late afternoon, once the demolition was finished, more people gathered for the cleanup. Foreman Dean had completed his work and then, with Hong, carried all the discarded altars and sacred items to the river and threw them in. It was less a river and more a canal, connecting to the main river with a bridge spanning its middle. This was also where people walked outside the village. The river itself was not wide but flowed swiftly. Darkness began to fall. Dean looked around. Hardly anyone was coming or going anymore. Both banks were thickly overgrown with grass. Taking a deep breath, he turned to Hong and said, "Throw it down quickly." With that, the two threw the sacred items into the water. A splash, then everything sank. The two went down to the bank to wash their hands, then turned back. The enormous banyan tree finally succumbed to human strength, quickly crashing down. The other men hadn't stopped, continuing to chop the wood and pile it up. Lights were strung up, and by the time everything was plunged into darkness, the work was finished. The whole crew was invited to Elder Keen's house for food and drinks. With such strong and able-bodied men, demolishing a shrine could indeed be completed in a single day. Everyone was quite excited, as the new shrine would be larger and more splendid. To be fair, the old shrine was dilapidated, with slippery, moss-covered steps that could cause one to fall if not careful. The villagers' triumphant cheers grew louder after a day's work. Everyone asked when the construction of the new shrine would begin. Elder Keen then stood up and announced, "For now, the plan is for all households to contribute together to rebuild this shrine. Those who have much contribute much, those who have little contribute little. Anything that doesn't need to be bought is even better. We'll contribute our labor. If all goes as planned, we can begin in about a month." Everyone nodded in agreement. The financial aspect was still substantial, not a minor issue. Moreover, such an important matter needed to be planned meticulously for the future. Elder Keen's plan seemed thorough, but the subdued atmosphere only lasted a short while before everyone immersed themselves in the feast. In the spacious courtyard of Elder Keen's house, the sound of clinking cups filled the air. But no one knew that demolishing the shrine was a grave mistake, a foolish act driven by listening to the impostor. Because later, after the shrine was gone, even more terrible things began to happen. After everyone finished eating, a strong wind began to howl, signaling an approaching storm. Once everything was cleaned up, no one lingered, they all returned home. By now, the rain had arrived. Gusts of wind swept inside. The flag, if not careful, would flap violently, emitting a piercing, ear-splitting sound. Elder Keen looked at the surrounding scene and could only shake his head. The sudden storm made him feel an unsettling sense of foreboding. He stayed awake all night, pacing back and forth, his mind racing like wildfire, unsure of what calamity was about to strike. After a day spent demolishing the shrine, the next day, everything returned to normal. People rode their bikes and went to work as usual. The routine continued until Elder Keen found himself outside the tea seller's shop across the bridge. He took a deep breath, filling his body with the morning air. Though a little weary from the previous day's concerns, a strong cup of tea now brought a sense of refreshment. The tea seller recounted a story she had shared with her customers yesterday. During the rainstorm last night, something frightening was tangled in a corner of the river. She tried to shine her light down to verify it. With the dim light, she could clearly see it, no mistake, but now it seemed to have vanished, which was rather surprising. Her retelling made everyone frown and look at her. But Elder Keen, on the other hand, didn't believe it. He said, "Oh, perhaps you're just getting old and imagining things, ma'am. There's nothing there. You're just connecting one random event to another." She quickly refuted him. Elder Keen just put his hand to his ear, wiggled it, then went out to the market to buy some groceries. Tonight, Elder Keen would meet with Dean the builder to discuss the design for the new shrine. Dean was a man with many years of construction experience. All such matters came to him. One could say the villagers' trust in him was extraordinary. Elder Keen bought all the groceries, then put them away. As time passed, the weather remained intensely hot, the pond water so warm it felt like it had been boiled. Sweat poured from him. Elder Keen could only shake his head, then sighed and went inside. It seemed that even the strongest fan offered little relief in such heat. Elder Keen stayed alone at home, and time passed quickly. It was time for him to prepare dinner when Dean arrived. Calling him Mr. wasn't quite right, but he had much experience and was a neighbor, so they were accustomed to the term, though Dean was much younger than Elder Keen. The two brought out wine and sat down to drink, using the alcohol to loosen their tongues as they discussed the blueprints and financial figures they had on paper. Eventually, they approved the plans based on the cost estimates. The discussion took a while, but time passed quickly, though who knew what problems might arise. A month would pass swiftly, and all materials needed to be meticulously prepared. Fortunately, the village had many skilled builders, so there was no need to worry. After drinking for a while, the two felt quite tired, so they bid each other farewell and went home. Along the road, past the other houses, only distant pools of light from lamps remained. Dean continued walking along the familiar path home. Although his steps weren't completely steady, he could feel the alcohol affecting him. He had to walk slowly, step by step, to avoid stumbling and kept hiccuping, reeking of wine. He continued straight ahead, paying no attention to anything. It seemed he had already passed his house, but his feet kept guiding him onward. When he reached the bridge, Dean was quite surprised, asking himself, then looking down at his feet, he nudged them and muttered, "Am I too drunk? Why am I out here instead of going home?" Dean let out a heavy sigh, then intended to turn back. Suddenly, he felt a chilling sensation run down his spine. He shivered slightly, turning his head, and noticed a dark shadow in the water, waving its hand faster and faster. He stared, completely horrified, his face pale, at the dark, ghostly figure standing on the surface of the water. Dean wanted to run home but couldn't. No matter how he tried to run, he was already at the riverbank. Facing the salty, shimmering water, he could only hear faint, eerie laughter echoing in his ears. Dean was thus dragged down into the cold water. Despite struggling with all his might, he couldn't resist even a little, and so he surrendered, losing his life there. At home, Dean's family was worried because he rarely came home late. They were restless, calling out to him everywhere. But when they looked outside and came back in, all they found was emptiness. Knowing her father was with Elder Keen, Dean's daughter quickly ran out to ask. However, Elder Keen only shook his head and said, "Why, dear? He clearly left early. I wouldn't know." Hearing this, everyone assumed Dean had gone somewhere else, so they didn't wait any longer, letting the night pass. That meant Dean had been in the water all night. The wind continued to howl incessantly, like mournful cries in the darkness. The tea seller also felt uneasy. She went to the river and saw shadowy figures flickering, terrifying her. She insisted she wasn't dreaming, that this was a clear reality with no room for error. Until morning, Dean still hadn't returned. This was highly unusual. Everyone rushed out to search for him, asking at every house but found nothing. Elder Keen also frantically searched everywhere but couldn't find anything more. Sitting at the tea shop, Elder Keen felt quite restless and agitated. Seeing this, the tea seller asked him about it. After Elder Keen explained, she told him about the strange things she had encountered yesterday. Elder Keen frowned because her story was too outlandish, especially coming from her. If it were someone else telling it, perhaps Elder Keen would have believed it. But he had known her for so long, and her stream of idle gossip was quite familiar. Elder Keen was different from everyone else. In his mind, her story was simply unbelievable. He just sighed as he listened to her. But she was persistent, talking almost non-stop. This made Elder Keen simply shake his head, stand up, pay, and leave. Dean's family members were screaming loudly. They had a premonition that something terrible had happened to their loved one, and they were right, for Dean was gone and everything felt hopeless. Elder Keen, too, worried frantically and searched, but to no avail. But the story didn't end there. A few days after Dean's disappearance, the next person to vanish was none other than Khanh, who had helped Dean dispose of the shrine's contents into the river. That evening, as usual, Khanh drank alone in his small house, the light bulb casting a faint glow on his seat. After a tiring day's work, relaxing in the evening was understandable. He felt quite at ease, his body somewhat relieved. He stepped outside to enjoy the cool air when suddenly he noticed movement outside his door. He went out to investigate. Footsteps echoed, and Khang's body began to shiver with cold. Time seemed to warp dizzyingly, making it impossible to discern anything clearly. Hong painstakingly followed the footsteps outside. He realized the shadowy figure looked like Dean. He tried to call out but couldn't. It felt incredibly difficult. He began to speed up, chasing after it. But for some unknown reason, Dean, who was merely walking, seemed to move faster than Hong could run. Hong's eyes paid no attention to his surroundings, focused only on his target. He wasn't careful and fell into the water. The deep, rapidly flowing water surged, making Hong struggle violently, having been plunged so suddenly into it. He tried to scream and thrash in every direction, desperate to escape the water that gripped his body. But Hong was tenacious, trying to grab onto the riverbank, his hand finding purchase in a clump of grass. He strained with all his might to pull himself up when he saw another person at his feet. Hong had found the ghost and pushed himself up a bit, then screamed in fright, "Who's there? Help me, pull me up." But when his drenched figure turned to look at the bank, he was horrified to see Dean standing there. "Dean, help me, pull me up, I can't hold on." Dean, far from Hong, seemed fearful. He only curved his lip, then raised his foot and delivered a powerful kick to Hong's head. It was still early, and the tea seller, hearing the commotion in the river, quickly ran out to see. But no matter how she looked, she saw nothing. She lived right by the river but had never witnessed such strange phenomena, nor any missing persons. Yet, she began to suspect that something was terribly wrong with this river. The next morning, everyone returned to their normal work routine. Everyone was buzzing with talk about a new day's work. Elder Khanh had just finished brushing his teeth and walked around his house for a while, then went outside to inquire about any new information regarding Dean. He knew he wasn't directly responsible for Dean's disappearance, but he felt a sense of unease, so he made an effort to ask around the village. But there was nothing. No reason for Dean to have left. Or had something happened? That question kept swirling in Elder Khane's mind, making it hard to focus on anything else. Exhausted from a whole morning of walking and asking questions, he returned home to eat. Outside his door, someone was calling out softly, wanting to report another missing person. Elder Khane stood up, annoyed and agitated. "What is this now?" His words clearly conveyed his deep concern for the village's troubles. Just the day before, the previous disappearance remained unsolved, and now there was another one reported. When it came to the matter of discarding the shrine's items, only the demolition crew knew the details. But no one considered this possibility, jumping from one problem to the next. Seeing this, Elder Khane quickly opened the door and went out with the person running to him. Hong hadn't gone to work today, and his door was left open. Neighbors thought he was sick, which was why he hadn't come out, but they had waited and called all morning with no sign of him. Hong was usually very careful, so leaving his door unlocked when he went out was strange. But a search outside yielded nothing, confirming another disappearance. The authorities were getting headaches over these issues. No matter how skilled the detective, not a single trace could be found. Elder Khane felt he'd had enough of these past few days. He didn't want to delve any deeper into his thoughts. He spoke up. "Ma'am, could you please stop talking nonsense? My head is aching. You keep going on about ghosts and spirits. If they existed, people would be dead, not still alive." Elder Khane's expression grew more strained than ever, causing the tea seller to finally stop. She turned back to selling tea, while Elder Khane sat looking out at the bridge and the flowing river. For many years, it had remained the same, so how could there be ghosts here? At this thought, he could only shake his head with a weary sigh, then drank his water, stood up, paid the shopkeeper, and slowly walked home. The search for the missing people continued with full force, and the matter of the shrine couldn't be delayed. That evening, after eating, Elder Khane lay down for a nap on his familiar bed. He lived alone now. Of his 3 sons, only the youngest was still in his final year of school. The 2 older sons had already graduated and found stable jobs. Elder Khane's wife had passed away a few years ago. Occasionally, people would be invited over for conversations and drinks. But as the village wasn't suitable for his children, they only managed to visit during holidays. As Elder Khane slept, he suddenly found himself standing on the bridge outside the river. The sky was pitch black. This dream felt eerily real, not a single detail out of place. Only the light of the moon illuminated the surroundings. He felt a chill run down his spine, then his eyes scanned the area, but he saw almost nothing. It was too dark, and his vision wasn't as sharp as it used to be. Taking a deep breath, he tried to return home, but then he heard a familiar sound. Indeed, it was the voices of Dean and another person. He turned to search for them, but after a while they were nowhere to be seen. He only heard calls blending with the sound of the flowing water, growing louder and louder. Elder Khanh felt quite bewildered. Then, he squinted his eyes again and saw two shadowy figures under the swiftly moving water, their clothes soaked. Clearly, he tried to step closer to see more clearly. If it was not Dean and Hong, it couldn't be anyone else. Dean, Hong, where are you? But the two figures didn't answer anything, only slowly submerged themselves, even though they weren't moving at all. There were no signs of being dragged, just like a scene from a movie. But what could Elder Khanh do but run after them and call out? His steps were incredibly fast, but by the time he reached the spot, the two had vanished. He walked down slowly but unfortunately slipped and fell into the river. No, no! Elder Khanh screamed in his house, then jolted awake. He raised a hand to his forehead, wiping away the trickling sweat. Elder Khanh was terrified, drenched in sweat in his bed. After a few minutes, he reached out and looked towards the veranda. The afternoon sun was shining down. He went outside to change clothes and shower to feel lighter. Perhaps he had walked a lot today, which made his body tired, and he had slept longer than usual. Recalling the strange dream while he was drinking water, he shivered slightly. He remembered what the tea seller had told him, then clicked his tongue. Those words from her are leading nowhere. It's just too confusing. It seemed he only thought that the tea seller's story had distracted him. For the past few days, his mind had constantly been under strain. As he was pondering deeply, his phone rang. He picked up the ringing phone. It was his youngest son calling. He answered and chatted for a while. Elder Khahn's facial muscles relaxed. He was no longer tense. He stood up and walked around the village, then went to the site of the demolished shrine to check every nook and cranny. No sooner had he arrived than the impostor called to speak about the shrine. He said he had been busy lately and hadn't had a chance to inform Elder Khanh. Elder Khanh responded, then explained the specific problem. The impostor listened, then nodded and told everyone to prepare everything thoroughly. He would come over to choose an auspicious day and time to begin building the new shrine for the villagers. According to the impostor, this new, sturdy shrine would bring many benefits. Elder Khanh sat alone, deep in thought. Even he himself hadn't wanted to demolish the old shrine, which had been connected to everyone for so long. But no matter what, the impostor had spoken, and Elder Khanh had to go along with the majority. Perhaps it was just an excessive coincidence, but what was done couldn't be undone. Moreover, the new one would surely be more spacious, and everything would be better, so there was no need to worry further. On the surface, everything seemed to be going well, but after the shrine was demolished, 2 more people went missing. This not only caused confusion among the villagers, but also left families unable to eat or sleep peacefully. Everyone seemed to fall into a state of helplessness, constantly despondent and burning incense, praying incessantly, yet finding no relief. Elder Khanh had also forgotten to mention the other problem to the impostor, but he decided to let time pass and deal with it later. What if the impostor came the next day and found them? But the most important thing now was to believe and hope that those 2 were still safe. The evening air grew milder compared to the intense heat of the morning. Twilight cast long shadows on the village road, lined with sparse grass and trees. Taking a moment to breathe, Elder Khanh returned home to prepare dinner. It was now 8:00 a.m. Outside the village entrance, the last bus had dropped off passengers, and Khanh was still some distance away, running his heart out to get home to Elder Khanh. Coming home at this hour would surely surprise his father. He hadn't prepared anything, but Khanh just wanted to get home early to rest. His feet pounded on the dark, empty road, a long stretch of fields. Though his backpack was heavy with belongings, he cheerfully and innocently walked into the tea seller's shop to buy some cakes. The shopkeeper, seeing Khanh, wasn't surprised. She brought out some food for the young man. After he ate, she asked about his health. Looking at the tea seller's shop, which only emitted a faint light from inside, Khanh smiled, then slung his backpack and stepped onto the bridge. The moment Khan's foot touched the bridge, he felt a strange, prickling sensation spread through his body. His backpack slowly dropped to the ground. Khanh tried to use all his strength to break free from whatever was controlling him. "What's happening? What is this?" he tried to say. But he couldn't speak. He tried to scream, but it was useless. His throat couldn't produce any sound. His eyes stared straight at the river in a desperate gesture, his hands twisting together. He saw 2 figures walking slowly and unsteadily. Khanh couldn't believe his eyes. Those 2 weren't people, they were 2 spirits slowly approaching him. He could only swallow, his limbs collapsing to the ground. His mind felt utterly blank. If one listened carefully, they would surely hear faint laughter echoing from afar. Elder Khanh, at home, loving his family in the dark house, leaned his cheek against the ceiling, tossing and turning. His body felt strangely hot. He put his hand to his forehead, pondering if something was wrong with him. All night long, he heard only the wind blowing outside, rattling the door, along with the constant rustling of leaves from the trees. He lay for a while, half asleep, and then it was morning without him realizing it. Just as he finished brushing his teeth, he heard a child's urgent cry from outside. He turned and went out. "Elder Khanh, run to the bridge, something's wrong with Khanh." The boy's voice was shrill, as if he was about to cry. Elder Khanh frowned. Khanh had announced he would be back only the day after tomorrow. "Are you sure it's Khanh, boy? I just woke up and I'm tired." "It's true, Elder, I'm not lying. This morning I went to Hong's, and I saw some market-goers standing in a corner, staring at him kneeling. It was very strange. And you have 3 sons, only Khanh stays home the longest, so how could we be mistaken, Elder?" Elder Khane's steps quickened. He thought to himself, "Oh, please, sacred spirits, don't let anything happen to my son." He ran outside, and it was exactly as the boy had reported. Khanh was as if performing some ritual by the river. What's going on? His eyes were open, but no matter how they called, he wouldn't awaken. Elder Khanh was in a state of utter panic. He went from person to person, seeking the best course of action. People, seeing his distress, offered suggestions. "In my opinion, let's take him home and then decide what to do. Leaving him like this is not good." The tea seller came out, also stunned, unsure of what the problem was. Last night she had seen Khanh perfectly normal, with no signs of illness, yet this morning a crowd had gathered. She could only watch as the young men gently carried Khanh onto a stretcher and took him to the infirmary for examination. Khanh had always been physically weak, and Elder Khanh rarely allowed him to do heavy labor. It was quite puzzling that this thin, bookish young man, whom strong men struggled to lift, feeling like their backs would break, weighed perhaps only just over 50 kg, no different from a boulder. Elder Khanh, upon hearing this, became hesitant. He thought, clearly, he's only that weight, how can he be heavier? He doesn't even want to eat, so how could he be so heavy? But what had just happened before his eyes made Elder Khanh, despite his disbelief, nod in agreement. So many people had witnessed it. 2 men couldn't carry the bag of bones, which made some other young men look on and laugh. A few of them came over and provocatively said, "What's with all this heavy talk? If you don't want to carry him, just say so." The 2 men frowned at the provocateur's attitude. Then they retorted, "We're not faking it, go ahead and try for yourself." The provocateur smirked, then bent down to put his arms around Khan's body to lift him, and he too experienced the same shocking weight. Seeing this, Elder Khanh quickly said, "All right, everyone, focus on helping me. We can't leave the boy like this. We'll deal with arguments later." The young men quickly managed to get Khanh onto the stretcher. Then, several others lifted him and carried him to the infirmary. Upon arrival, Khanh was immediately examined by the doctors at the central clinic. However, after a preliminary check, no abnormalities were found. But seeing the family's worry, they tried giving him an IV drip. Elder Khanh paced back and forth restlessly, making the others also feel anxious. After entering the room to see Khanh still motionless, Elder Khanh could only thank everyone for their help. He asked everyone to leave and sat quietly by his son, not moving an inch. The tea seller came in, looking at Elder Khane's son, bringing some fruit. She also spoke with Elder Khanh. There were 3 people in the room, but Khanh couldn't move. Elder Khanh recounted the entire story to everyone, including his strange dream about the 2 missing people. The tea seller listened, somewhat pensive and speaking hesitantly, not entirely clearly. Elder Khanh then pressed her. "What is it? Can you tell me? Why are you being so evasive?" "Well, I'm thinking about something. I'm not entirely sure, but I have a premonition that this bad omen originated from one place." Elder Khanh pondered deeply, then asked her, "Please tell me, I'm listening to hear your thoughts." "I believe the problem here stems from the small shrine that everyone demolished. It was the soul of the villagers for so many years. That's why I think of it. As for the problem after the disposal, I don't know anything more." The tea seller spoke slowly, word by word, letting it sink into Elder Khane's ears. Elder Khanh listened, then turned to look outside, not at her. "No, it's just nature not bringing good harvests, which led to such difficulties. Fortunately, Khanh wasn't missing like the other 2, otherwise Elder Khanh would go mad now." The tea seller understood Elder Khane's feelings and gently said, "I'm just saying, but please take things slowly, don't worry too much. Let's just let it go for now and find a solution later. Besides, it's just my thought. For now, we must at least worry about Khanh. I should go back to my shop." With that, the tea seller stood up and left, leaving Elder Khanh alone, deep in confused thought. He paced back and forth constantly, making the doctor in the room also feel exasperated and shake his head. Worrying about one's child was understandable, but if what the tea seller said was true, and it affected the villagers too, then things would only get worse. Outside the village, the story of Khanh was discussed by everyone. Many wondered what was happening here. There was always some trouble, and the other two had vanished without a trace. Everyone, without needing reminders, told each other to go home early from work. Children, seeing Khan's condition, even stopped playing. The village was now in an uproar, completely chaotic. Time passed like this. If people were confused in the morning, by night they were terrified. Lights only flickered briefly during dinner before being extinguished. Normally, at this time, the whole village would be brightly lit, but now it was completely different. Elder Khanh sat, not eating or drinking anything. His head was always whispering to his wife, communicating with the void. Looking at his wrinkles, it seemed everything was leading to something unpredictable. The phone rang. It was his 2 daughters. Elder Khanh could only find words to say that they shouldn't come back at this time. He desperately wanted to sit and eat with his children. Perhaps only during Tet could they truly gather. But no matter what, if he asked them not to return, there had to be a good reason. What if they, like Khanh, suffered an even more terrible fate? Looking at the clock, it was past 10 p.m. Since morning, he had only been pacing and watching over his son. Seeing this, the doctor brought him something to lie down on, and Elder Khanh rested. As for Khanh not waking up, no one knew how to explain it. But when people had lifted Khanh onto the stretcher, they saw his eyes rolled back, as if he had seen something truly terrifying. But now, Elder Khanh was utterly exhausted. He couldn't hold on any longer. He drifted off to sleep, forgetting the chaotic thoughts in his head. Not long after, he was awakened by the night shift nurse. He turned to look at his son, feeling quite relieved that he had finally woken up. But when the two searched around the infirmary, Khanh was nowhere to be found. Elder Khanh then walked sluggishly back, only to see the shadow kneeling on the bridge again. Knowing it was Khanh, he ran over, not understanding why Khanh had returned to the same spot as that morning. He quickly ran back to the village, shouting for everyone's help. Everyone was woken up from their rest. But now, human life was at stake, so they rushed out. After a struggle, they managed to carry Khanh back to the infirmary. People asked Elder Khanh about Khanh, but Elder Khanh didn't know how to answer. While Elder Khanh was looking on in a daze, Khanh suddenly heard the faint sound of river water. The wind blew strongly, giving him goosebumps, and then the voices of 2 spirits. He saw them through. Come here now." Khanh couldn't control himself. He just stood up, then walked out into the darkness in silence. The night shift nurse couldn't react and just passed through the main door. Khanh went to the bridge again, then knelt down in the same position as that morning. Elder Khanh called the imposter. The imposter, sounding half asleep, curtly responded to Khanh and went back to sleep, unconcerned about Elder Khanh and everyone else's distress over Khanh. In reality, that man was no real spiritual master. He merely used chance and borrowed the title of master to deceive people. He had built up his reputation in various ways, creating a false facade. He came to this village by invitation, but his ultimate goal was always to gain more money and pocket it. He smirked mischievously when he saw the villagers here readily agree to his suggestions. Not only did these matters benefit him, but he also gained many other things. Now, with such problems, he simply rested, not caring about the chaos he had caused. Moreover, tonight was the last night he would sleep in his bed, for something far more terrifying awaited him. Early the next morning, he woke up. As per the appointment, he went outside to check the situation. Elder Khanh was waiting outside the tea seller's shop, impatiently watching cars pass by, his eyes filled with anxiety, unsure of what the outcome would be. He kept standing, sitting, going in and coming out. The tea seller had to urge him to calm down and sit. Elder Khanh waited a little longer, then the imposter arrived. Elder Khanh felt a sense of relief, then invited the imposter inside. He recounted the entire process, from the demolition of the shrine to the imposter. The imposter, upon hearing it, was somewhat startled, as these events were beyond his predictions. Is the heavens truly toying with me like this? He thought. Each word Elder Khanh spoke made him break out in a cold sweat. His eyes didn't blink, his hands and feet trembled slightly, but he tried his best to keep his composure so as not to reveal himself. What strange thing is happening here? He pondered, then stood up and walked out to the bridge, still lost in his calculations. He quickly turned back, wanting to assess his own situation. He wanted to end this matter as quickly as possible, so he told Elder Khanh, "Unfortunately, this situation with your son is unexpected. As for the other two, once the new shrine ceremony is complete, I will help find them. Right now, even if you search, you won't find them. But I have a premonition that they are still alive. Tonight, I will set up an altar outside and perform a ritual to deal with Khanh first." But this alone was enough to sway the anxious Elder Khanh. Elder Khanh could only nod. He had no more patience to see his son like this, so it had to be resolved quickly. The money didn't matter to him now. Elder Khanh was worried, while the impostor smirked, pleased that his cunning plan had been accepted. Returning home to prepare his things, he drove his motorcycle alone to the bridge, not allowing anyone to follow. He meticulously prepared, setting up an altar, lighting incense, then skillfully chanted and threw items into the river. Even though no one was watching, he performed everything according to ritual. The wind began to pick up, a cold gust sending shivers down his spine. The previously calm water suddenly churned as if boiling. He gaped, utterly astonished by the scene unfolding before his eyes. Now, the nightmare had come for him. A sudden, cold shiver ran through him, making him smile faintly and say, "Why is it about to rain like this? I need to go home quickly before it gets too late." With that, he put his belongings into his bag, ready to get on his motorcycle and leave. The motorcycle, no matter how many times he tried to start it, only made sputtering noises and wouldn't ignite. He felt puzzled. The bike was new, why wouldn't it start? He heard faint giggling behind him. He swallowed hard, goosebumps rising on his skin, and slowly turned around to see what was behind him. At that moment, he felt the motorcycle was bearing a considerable weight. When he turned, he saw the two missing men, their faces ghostly white with a haunting smile. He didn't know what else to do but scream in terror. The tea seller, startled, quickly got up and went out to see. She arrived just as the impostor was in a panic. The motorcycle began to shake uncontrollably. He twisted the throttle to its maximum, then surged forward. But what he saw, which the tea seller could not, were the two spirits reaching out their cold hands, touching his body. A man who specialized in cheating working people out of their money, taking all their efforts for himself, and in the end, those who listened to his sacrificial rituals received nothing worthwhile. Instead, they got arrogant and baseless pronouncements. Now, perhaps for the first time, he encountered these spirits, and the fitting reward for a man like him was to be plunged into the river. The motorcycle sputtered, then the engine died. How could the tea seller know that the man was now struggling desperately in the water, his limbs as if locked? He tried to rise, using all his might to pull his body up, but couldn't. He thrashed with all his strength, but no matter how he struggled, he sank. The tea seller, seeing such a sight, could only remain silent. She was speechless before that scene and watched as the fake master slowly descended into the water. Then she began to scream out. But by now, it was incredibly difficult. When people heard the news and rushed out, all that remained was a motorcycle rolling uselessly by the riverbank. The items he had brought were scattered everywhere. As per the tea seller's words, everyone quickly rushed down to search. But all they could do was shake their heads. It seemed there was no result. Elder Khanh, hearing the news, asked the tea seller what had happened, but no one could explain these things. Elder Khanh felt bewildered because that fake master had spoken with such certainty, claiming everything was within his control. Now, Elder Khanh could only shake his head, watching everyone struggle to retrieve the impostor's body. He lit a cigarette, a white packet in his hand. Someone came over, asking for further plans. "Elder Khanh, I think we need to find a true master to resolve this. Otherwise, it won't be good if we wait. We need to find one tonight, do you agree?" Elder Khanh, hearing this, looked around at the frantic villagers, then nodded his head in agreement. That man, upon hearing this, said nothing further but quickly returned home to get his vehicle, then drove straight out of the village. Elder Khanh told everyone to stop searching. Everyone found his suggestion puzzling. Someone even asked, "Why stop searching, Elder? Everyone, come up to the bank. Even if we search more, we won't find him. Let's rest by the bank and wait for someone to come and solve this." Elder Khanh quickly urged everyone to go ashore. They were confused by him but eventually obeyed. A stretch of the river was illuminated, accompanied by a group of people sitting at the tea seller's shop. Everyone was breathing heavily from exhaustion. Those who were still drenched shivered uncontrollably, their bodies chilled to the bone. The tea seller, being observant, quickly brewed warm water for everyone. Watching the steam rise from the cups, time seemed to drag, making everyone restless. After a while, a distant engine sound and the headlights of a car made everyone turn their eyes towards it. So the person had arrived, accompanied by an old master with him. The master had white hair and beard and a kindly, benevolent face. The master got out of the car to everyone's welcome. "We deeply apologize, master, for making you travel at night like this, but our village is facing troubles. Please forgive us." The old master listened and nodded, then sat at a table, drinking water and listening to everyone's story. In the presence of such a dignified master, everyone seemed quite reverent. The master listened to Elder Keen's story amidst the anxious crowd, but his eyes kept looking towards the riverbank, paying little attention to what Elder Keen was saying. Clicking his tongue, the master motioned for Elder Keen to stop. Then, he walked out to the bridge. No one knew what the master was preparing to do. They only saw him take out an incense stick, light it, and then an additional yellow talisman, making the atmosphere solemn. Everyone around only watched what the master was doing. He took a mirror from his hand, then threw it into the river, waiting for the talisman to burn out. He then took a fishing net that someone had used and asked, "Could someone bring me an empty basin?" The basin was brought out. The master placed the net down, then put some kind of powder inside, rolling it into small balls. Many looked at the master, not understanding the meaning of his actions. They wanted to approach and ask, but the master seemed to sense their intentions, so he motioned for silence. No one approached him further, until he seemed to have finished preparing the nets, then stood up, frowned, and looked down. "Everyone, pull from the bottom up to here, and then I will announce further." His words were brief but enough to make everyone around him obey. It was quite reasonable given the master's way of working. No one knew what he would do next, so they just nodded and followed. One by one, the shivering men grabbed the nets and plunged into the water. The cold wind made the atmosphere even colder. They struggled, straining their bodies against the strong currents. At first, even with nothing in the net, they all felt something strange. The master watched from above, showing no other emotion. "It's heavy, why is it so heavy? The rope's almost breaking?" A voice shouted in surprise from 3 men. Everyone focused with all their curiosity, then strained with all their might, pulling up 1 or 2 things, like clumps of human hair, surfacing. Then 2 bodies were pulled up with them. Elder Keen was so terrified he nearly fell backward. It was exactly like the dream he had about these 2 men. Everyone turned to look at Elder Keen. The other families, now beyond sorrow, rushed to embrace the corpses. The deceased's bodies were soaked. Their bodies were stiff. Cries of profound grief filled the air. For Elder Keen, it was an unimaginable shock. Tears flowed as the sky gradually brightened. Elder Keen, now regaining his composure, invited the master back to his house for tea. The rest had to gather together to bring the dead home to arrange a proper burial. It was only early morning, yet unbelievable things had already happened. The 2 men, Dean and Hong, who had been missing for days, were finally found. The master was invited to Elder Keen's house for tea. Elder Keen offered the master a cigarette, and with a trembling voice, asked why the master knew. The master pondered, then slowly answered Elder Keen's question. "When I first arrived here, from a distance of over 100 meters, I sensed something ominous. This village has too much negative energy. I also heard a little about that fake master." At this point, the master suddenly stopped, making Elder Keen feel anxious and press on. "Please continue, master." That man was no true spiritual master. Looking at the tricks he pulled, one could tell he was a fraud. He died, but that fate was something he should have received long ago, not just now. And people are too easily fooled. The village was peaceful. The shrine was a bit old, but there was no need for such elaborate rituals to dispose of it into the river. Now, who will protect the village? Fortunately, not too many people have died yet. The true master's wisdom was now revealed. The whole village had simply followed the impostor's words, unaware that they were just cheap tricks. But the master was right. Not too many unfortunate things had happened yet. But remembering Khanh, Elder Keen said, "Master, what about my son? He's been like this for 2 days. Your son has great fortune and a strong life. He will be fine. I will deal with him tomorrow." But first and foremost, people demolishing the shrine like that was wrong. Ghosts and spirits are rampant now, and such actions can lead to death. So I must go back and prepare very thoroughly to confront them. Elder Keen nodded, agreed, and respectfully saw the master out, then focused on organizing the funerals for the 2 deceased. The funerals were organized immediately, enveloped in the rising smoke of incense. Elder Khanh rushed from one gathering to the next, trying to settle everything. No one had slept a wink all night, so now everyone was quite sleepy and disoriented. The sounds of flutes, drums, and mournful cries filled the air, choking everyone with grief. Elder Khanh had even more worries than this. Despite his exhaustion, he didn't forget to check the current situation. This master said things would be fine, but for some reason, Elder Khanh worried even more than he had with the previous fake master. Now that the imposter was dead, or perhaps this master intentionally didn't find him, Elder Khanh felt a sense of closure. Fortunately, the village had not yet ventured into ancient matters related to money. After returning home, the master always rested. He began his work, undertaking the task of cleansing the village, which was now in a state of great apprehension. He took a small vial and dripped his own blood in various spots. Then, the master securely closed the door of his dilapidated house. Inside, there was an altar with various statues for worship. The atmosphere was quite mystical. No one knew what the master's next plan was. In the village, after a night of quiet, people began to bid farewell to the two deceased, sending them to their final rest. Following Elder Khane's instructions, everyone gathered at the site of the demolished shrine to discuss things and await the master's arrival. The whole village knew to prepare whatever the master requested. After their discussion, the master also arrived. He gently frowned, then looked around, speaking when he saw the ruins. This shrine was bringing prosperity to the village, yet you heard some baseless rumor and destroyed it. The master sighed, and most of those who had voted to demolish the shrine lowered their heads. The master then gave everyone 5 small vials he had blessed and told them to distribute them, burying them in specific areas. After that, they also had to buy offerings for a worship ceremony at the shrine site and then go to the river. And of course, the most important task at hand was to awaken Khanh from his unconscious state. Everyone quickly followed orders, preparing items. The master, along with the remaining people, set up an altar to perform a ritual at the shrine site. The sound of drums echoed, stirring the entire afternoon atmosphere. No one rested, rushing back and forth. Compared to resting, the matters of the village were now more important and urgent. The master went to the riverbank and told everyone to clear the grass from both sides for a stretch. He stuck large candles all around, then mysteriously raised a finger and told everyone to return home. That evening, after dinner, Khanh was brought to the bridge, illuminated by the bright lights. The master sat down and began to perform a ritual. Khan's body began to convulse, terrifying everyone. Children turned away, not daring to look further. It was a haunting image, difficult to explain. There was no physical contact, yet Khan's body twitched uncontrollably. After many rings of his bell, the master spread a yellow cloth that floated on the river. He stood in silence, then closed his eyes. The quiet atmosphere became tense. The cloth was the focus of attention. Slowly sank beneath the water. Then, a strange gust of wind blew. Elder Khanh quickly went outside to ask what had happened. The master nodded and told everyone to take Khanh home. The rest was not yet finished. The master took off his robe and submerged his thin body into the water, then searched for something. Everyone wanted to jump in and help, but the master firmly forbade them, and then, after a moment, told everyone to light incense so that the spirits would no longer linger there. Immediately, everyone's requests were swiftly carried out. All the offerings were brought out to invite some invisible presence. With a deep breath, he gathered all his strength and dived into the water. Those on the bank could only look at each other. Some even cried out, asking why no one was going down to pull the master up. But no one did, for if they didn't obey the master, they wouldn't know what else he intended to do. Time passed like this, sweat dripping down their foreheads. For some unknown reason, everyone's eyes remained fixed on the swirling water. They hoped the master was all right. All they knew was that the surrounding candles suddenly blew out after a gust of wind, and then the master managed to pull himself, along with the offerings, onto the bank. The master's body was exhausted, and he began to breathe heavily. Everyone gasped, for what he brought up were the items that Dean and Hong had disposed of. Thus, everyone gradually understood the full extent of the events. But it was also due to their excessive belief in these matters, choosing a master carelessly, which led to tragic consequences. That fake master had paid the price for all his past wrongdoings, for harming people. Faintly, as people left, strange whistling sounds could be heard in the background, as if a crowd was clashing, but no one paid attention to it anymore. The next morning, Khanh also woke up and regained a sense of normalcy, no longer feeling disoriented. Having just returned home, he had already encountered such troubles. After hearing what happened, he still felt lucky. The new shrine had begun to be rebuilt quickly by everyone. People worked with all their might, focusing, carrying materials to build the shrine. The master also stayed to help everyone finish the construction, then performed a new ritual to invite the village guardian deity back, so that the village could return to its inherent peaceful days.